You stare at the target camera, you're like, oh.
Oh my God, that's the
Is
worst.
that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good, yeah? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so scooch all the way to the side. So you want the whole forearm supported when you do this. And elbow bend. Okay. So your start position is neutral here, wrist neutral. So to test for supination, you're gonna stabilize the proximal forearm and move the distal wrist into supination and get a sense for the end feel. And then to measure that joint motion, you're going to use the anterior surface near the wrist flexor crease, and you're gonna place the fulcrum of the goniometer on the ulnar styloid process, so kind of on the anterior surface of where the ulnar styloid process is. Okay, and then from there, you can bring them into that range and move the moving arm, keeping it aligned with the radius and the ulna, the distal radius of ulna. Okay, and then you'd be taking a measurement there. So that was about 35 degrees. So you're a little bit tight in that supination. Yeah, it's a little bit tight supination. Okay, so that's supination and the anterior surface. For pronation, so for testing for end feel, again, taking all the way to the end range, applying over pressure, you would expect a firm end feel for both of these. And then to take the measurement, you'd put it on the dorsal surface over the ulna. That's where the fulcrum goes, so I don't know if you can see that on the screen. Okay. And then the stable arm stays perpendicular to the floor. Bring her down into supination.
Pronation.
Oh, sorry, pronation. And then you're staying parallel to the radius and the ulna. Okay? So that is more like 80 degrees. Looks good. So just a little bit stiff in the supination. Pronation looks good. Okay. All right, so pronation, supination. Wrist flexion extension. Optimally, we would have her on the edge of a table so that her wrist is hanging down. Maybe we can scooch you kind of all the way to the end there. Yeah, and you can face.
Oh, yeah.
You got it? Okay, thank you. Okay, so like we talked about yesterday in palpation, our landmark for wrist flexion extension is going to be the triquetrum, right? So, so you'd palpate the triquetrum, and you can find it by doing radial and ulnar deviation just off that lateral surface of the ulna. Okay, and then just assess first to get a sense for what the passive range of motion feels like. Again, we would expect a firm end feel for both of these. Okay. Can you guys see what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay. So I'm just stabilizing her proximal wrist on the forearm and moving the whole wrist into flexion extension. Okay, I get a guesstimate of what her extension looks like, so I think maybe around 80 degrees. So then we take our goniometer. Get yourself set up around 80. Okay, so we have triquetrum for the fulcrum. We have along the entire ulna here, and you can use the olecranon process as your bony landmark. Okay, so triquetrum, ulna to the olecranon, and then take her up into that range where you thought it was, and you're going to go parallel to that fifth metacarpal. And she's at about 76. Okay, and then you can keep your stable arm there, right? And then just bring her into flexion. And then for flexion, she has more than 90 degrees. She's got about 100 degrees of flexion. So it becomes pretty easy to check for wrist flexion extension if you just keep the goniometer in line with the forearm and move the wrist from there. And you can move them at the same time. Okay. All right. So, so why don't we, what we're going to practice together